What's up guys and dzień dobry everyone! Oh, and happy Chinese New Year, or should I say 新年快乐，红包拿来! In today's video, I would like to talk about something that is quite difficult to explain. Our wrist. One video is definitely not enough to go into all the details, but I'll try to talk about some basics here at least. It's not easy, especially in the beginning, to include your wrist into your playing, especially if you don't know when to use it and how to use it. I know that there are a lot of people who are watching professional recordings to see how professionals are moving their wrist. However, in these recordings, it can be inspiring and you can see a little bit how they are moving. On the other hand, the movements are so fast and so small because it is so much trained already that you won't see all the details in it. If you like this video, go and smack the like button like Arthur Rubinstein is smacking the keys. He's a professional, so he's allowed to do this. Don't imitate it at home. This video is sponsored by my Patreons. I would like to take a second and thank everyone who is supporting me on Patreon. Without you, I would not be able to produce all these videos. The cameras, the mics, the laptop, the light, everything that you see here would not be here if I didn't have my Patreons and my supporters. So if you would like to see more videos in the future, please consider supporting me on Patreon. You'll find the link in the description box. Let's first talk about why it is important to use the wrist. The wrist is having like two main jobs. It has also other jobs, but I would say these are the two main reasons why we're using the wrist. The first reason is it helps us to relax while we are playing, and the second is it gives us much more control over color and dynamics of the sound that we are creating. I see so many people trying to play piano and they're learning for quite a long while playing piano without actually using their wrist or without knowing how to use their wrist. And as soon as they start to learn to use it and to integrate it in their playing, it feels very, very strange for them because suddenly everything feels so free and relaxed and they feel like they don't have so much control, even though it's the other way around. Suddenly you have much more control if you understand how to use it. So I would say the earlier you learn to include your wrist in your playing, the more natural it will feel and the more natural you will get like this relationship to this part of your body. Let's talk about the wrist movements. The wrist actually has a very complex bone structure, which is, I guess, also the reason why we can move it in so many different directions. Now, of course, it's a little bit limited, but let's talk about the main two movements. So we have the vertical movement, which is just up and down, and we have the horizontal movement, which is not as big as the vertical movement. Most of the time we are not using just the vertical movement and just the horizontal movement, but we are using a combination of it, which is creating the circular movement. I will just name these things like this because I've learned it in German like this. I don't know how people would describe it in English. I think vertical and horizontal and circular movement is quite a nice image, so I'll just keep it here. When it comes to the vertical movement, we have two extreme wrist positions, the high wrist and of course the low wrist. And these are the extreme positions which are most of the time the starting and the ending point of a phrase. So most of the time we're starting with a low wrist and we're ending with a high wrist. Not always, but most of the time. A low wrist means that we put like the whole weight of our arm into the finger and into the key. So the fingers and the hand is completely stable, the wrist is low and the arm completely relaxed. Now, of course, like when I say completely relaxed, it's never completely relaxed, but it should feel like you're completely relaxed and just put the weight of your arm into the fingers. Now the other direction is that your fingers are completely relaxed. Here's energy going into it to get the arm up here and to get the wrist up here. But therefore the fingers are relaxed. So you see here, it can help you to relax either the arm or the fingers depending on what you need in that moment. The lower the wrist, the more weight of your arm you put into the notes, the more volume you're creating. Means the deeper the wrist, the more dynamic you're creating, so it's getting louder. The higher the wrist, the less dynamic you're creating, the less volume you're creating, because you're taking the weight out of it. So these are already like a lot of details. When we are talking about these two extreme positions of very low and very high wrist, as I said, these are just ending and starting points. Most of the time, or actually all the time, we are not like keeping ourselves in these positions. We are moving constantly, like really all the time we have to move, and the wrist is normally like somewhere in between these two extreme positions. Music is movement, and we need to move our body all the time to get into the flow of the music and to continue like breathing and moving together with the music. As soon as we stop moving, it's getting very, very hard to get back into this flow and to catch up with the right energy with the next note. So therefore, I would really recommend continue moving. One thing that has a lot to do with how fast you have to move your wrist is the length of the note. Now, this is like super, super difficult to explain, especially because there are so many exceptions and so many things to think about and to know about. I can't explain everything in just one video, so I'll try to keep it on its basics. And therefore, I'll take an example here. It's the Chopin Nocturne Opus 9, number 1. When we look into the Nocturne here, we see a lot of things going on, a lot of different movements. And when we now want to recreate these movements, including our wrist, we will have to take a look at different figures. So for example, we have this first figure here, which has pretty fast notes compared to like other notes that are coming later. For example, these notes are half the speed of these notes, and additionally they're staying on one line, while there here is much more movement in the line, as you can see. Also, when we look at the second page, we can see that we have much longer notes going on here, and like a completely different mood also with the pianissimo and sottovoce and all the octaves. You see it's very different from the first page, where there's actually much more movement. Depending on how fast or how slow the note is, like how long the actual length of the note is, we need to move our wrists differently. A very slow melody line, for example, needs a long movement, so you're basically like pushing through the whole length of the note, and most of the time if this continues like this, you're giving every single note one movement. The faster we play, for example when it's here at this point, or also here in the beginning, we need to put things together, like collect notes into one movement. All these notes here until this note here, they are creating together one whole cycle. So we're starting with a low wrist, coming up and going back again, and then ending with the low wrist on the F here. So now we talked about very long notes where you need one movement for one note. Then we talked about notes that are faster where you have to put it all together into one movement. And then we have sometimes to decide, okay, are we going to do like one movement for one note, or are we putting it all together into one movement? So in this case, it's this decision case. What is better for the music here? So these three we could put into one movement because of this slur, which is like showing us this phrasing. On the other hand, we also see these dots here, which does not mean staccato, it means more this tenuto thing. So like every single note has a special meaning, let's say, like you need to give it some heaviness to give it this meaningful touch. Sometimes we need to give everyone a lower wrist, so you get more weight, literally more weight into the note. Alright guys, so this was the video for today. I hope you enjoyed it. If you like it, please give it a thumbs up Don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell. And also, again, if you want to support me and this channel, please consider supporting me on Patreon. You'll find the link in the description box. For everyone who is interested in having lessons with me, I'm giving online masterclasses. You'll find a link also in the description box to my website where you can apply for 30, 45 or 60 minutes. If you like this video, maybe you will also be interested in this one where I'm explaining how to breathe, like different techniques on the piano, or this one, which is the 80-20 rule of connections between notes. We'll see us in the next videos. Bye. I can't sing. Blah. Hello.